Caroline, we're just going to start the recording, okay? Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Jan Curtis and Leslie Walton.
Okay, apologies, I forgot to put my mic on then. So second item on the agenda is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Don't think there are any, can't see them indicating, which is fine. And then on to item 3 in the agenda, which is minutes of the previous meeting to approve those as a correct record. Everybody happy with those? Somebody happy to move? Jess, happy to move? And Councillor Fogarty will second. Thanks very much. And then on to the substantive item of the agenda today, which is item 4, which is the Safeguarding People and Tackling Poverty work programme for 2022-2023. So as you remember from the last meeting, it was a bit of a strange meeting last time because at the start of the council following the elections, the corporate plan and things hadn't gone through council, so we couldn't really agree a work plan until that had happened. So it was a bit of a strange meeting. So today's meeting is effectively just to agree the work plan. Now that those priorities and the plans and strategies have gone through full council, we're able to decide on our work plan today. So there's been some work going on behind the scenes between now and then to look at what kind of our priorities we'll look at. So through the cabinet and key officers, senior officers, and so forth. So we've got a report which is in the agenda, which outlines kind of what we're thinking of in terms of the work plan this year for you to have a look at and for us to discuss today, give you an opportunity to ask any questions. And then at that point, then I think we'll be looking to formally move that, I believe, Alison, which would include a vote, a show of hands in the committee really about whether you're happy with that. So Simon Jones was with us online today. Simon's going to prepare the report for us. Grateful to him for doing that. And Simon's just going to outline to us what's in the report really and thinking about how it links with the corporate priorities and the manifesto and things like that. Simon, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the report. It is an indicative work programme at this stage, based on the knowledge we have, and it's pending, obviously, agreement of the committee. I guess the purpose of the CDC in terms of safeguarding people and tackling poverty is to look forward, and I guess that's how it's sort of distinct from the activity of scrutiny committees, really, in that way. But there obviously are some areas of overlap. So, as I say, this is an indicative work programme for 2022-23. It's aimed to be manageable in terms of the scale of work, so in terms of a limited number of items, and it builds on the work that we presented. The work that was presented last meeting was around the annual review of the work of the PDCs in tackling poverty and obviously people. And so a couple of the elements are building on work that was done, work that was commenced in those committees. Obviously, from this report suggests really the CDCs are an emerging entity in a way, and we're still working out how this process can function in the way it is to deliver on its ambition. But the expectations are that the work as set out in this report is aligned to, as the chair says, policy commitments which are new, and have there's a version of them just been presented to council, also aligned to the corporate plan, the new corporate plan, and the priorities within that and the steps within that, and obviously the recovery plan. So the work has been going on in terms of shaping up the policy commitments. I haven't been involved necessarily personally in all of that process, but and there has been a number of away days behind the scenes, I think, with cabinet and between cabinet members and chairs of these committees. And from that, we've been able to put forward I think four items initially for the work programme. And that's set out in the table in the report initially. And then it goes on to give a little bit more detail about them. So in terms of the first one is creating a workforce to deliver care services more directly, and that would align to in terms of a policy direction. It would be the required output. It's an intended outcome in terms of improving social well-being. It links to the policy commitment family around better care, and it links to the corporate priority on safeguarding people from harm. The second one is a new volunteering strategy. The third one is a new corporate debt policy, and the fourth one is a new local area coordination and best practice policy and guidance linked to recruitment of future local area coordinators. So in terms of the items as proposed, the first one around creating a social care workforce to deliver more social care services directly. And obviously it sets out this is a substantial piece of work with scope on including retention, recruitment, incentives, training, support, and then a delivery model and staff structure for rebalancing services between in-house and external provision. The volunteering strategy, building on collaborative work already undertaken regionally and locally involving Swansea CVS, and with a view to the strategy being completed this year. The corporate debt policy work was previously progressed in the Tackling Poverty PDC, but obviously the scope of work now needs to reflect urgently the cost of living crisis and other recent developments, for example, in housing, linked to the HRA arrears policy. And local area coordination, best practice policy guidance. Obviously, the scope of work here is that obviously our model within social care is predicated on early intervention and prevention, and how local area coordination supports that process, but also in terms of strengthening communities, building resilience within families and communities, and that sort of area work, but also looking at how that structure is fit for purpose going forward in terms of succession planning, consistency across all areas, and sharing best practice, that sort of thing. And engagement across, obviously, with enhanced engagement with community leaders and things. So in terms of the equalities and engagement implications, I think generally I would say that the process for these items will be around, the co-productive approach really that's prevalent within Swansea in terms of working with people to develop a way forward. With partners and in terms of citizens groups, and linking. So a lot of these areas have cross-cutting factors and complexity that will have to be worked through. For instance, grant funding has been a common theme within some of the areas that we've discussed in the past. Workforce obviously comes into all of these areas. Partnership working as well. Governance arrangements to take forward any strategy or policy going forward, and looking at the support structures to manage the change. I'm not a subject matter expert on any of the individual items. I guess I'll rely on colleagues to contribute their views on that. But I think in terms of impact as well, this is cross-cutting in terms of impact on children's services, adult services, and families and carers across the board. So I think that's the work programme I set out, but I think, as I've said, it will be an iterative process. We expect the scope to change, for the work programme to iterate, and I guess to be more focused as we go, really. I think that's all I'd have to say about this report, Chair.
So, okay, thanks, Simon. I appreciate that, and I appreciate doing the report for us. So we've got effectively what we've got is the 4 items for the work plan for the coming 12 months, as Simon outlined there. For members, information. We've also got the cabinet members here today. We've got 3 cabinet members: Alison Pugh, Hayley Gwilliam, and Louise Gibbard. Sorry, yes, I couldn't see that. And Louise Gibbard as well as a couple of heads of service here with Julie and Amy for adult and children's services respectively. So kind of our role today for you guys is to have an opportunity to ask questions about the items, point anything out, that kind of thing. But that's also then as members and officers to think about how best we're likely to deliver on that. So Alison and I were having a conversation before the meeting started about the challenges that we felt the last couple of years with the PDCs around officers not having enough time really between meetings to turn things around, given that we're meeting every month. But equally, if we don't meet regularly, things tend to slide, don't they, as well? So it's about us agreeing how that work plan is going to proceed in the kind of way that's most likely to allow us to deliver some of these things. I mean, the thing that strikes me straight away from the items is the sort of different size of scope, really, some of the items. So I know the volunteering strategy is something that we were overseeing in the PDC, and I know that's well underway, and we're sort of well down the road in terms of that. And we're also well down the way regionally around volunteering as well, which that's feeding into. So we've done a lot of work on that already, but sort of item 1, for instance, is quite a large piece of work. That's the one that sticks out really in terms of it being a large piece of work. Corporate debt policy potentially as well, and the local area coordinator work as well. So I think it's perhaps if we go through these chronologically, maybe we start with item 1. Any thoughts or comments or questions at this point on that? Alan, do you want to come in? Oh, okay. I'll bring in Councillor Jeffrey, is it? Councillor Jeffrey first, and then I bring in Julie. If that's okay, Julie.
Just a comment. I'm just wondering, how do you go about this in a practical sense? You know, what is actually our role here today and in future meetings, you know, and in between the meetings, you know?
That's a very good question. I think probably should start with that first. So the kind of our role here, Councillor Jeffrey, is to provide oversight and some direction to officers when they're working in these key policy areas. So the intention of the CDCs and the PDCs before them was to really trying to enable sort of a politically led council rather than necessarily an officer-led council that we've had potentially in the past in other places. So that's the intention of the committee really. But it's to provide oversight to the key areas of work that that officers are working on, and also to join up between kind of corporate strategies that Simon outlined and the political manifesto, which of course formed the basis of the Labour group's manifesto for getting voted in to lead the authority in May. So it's kind of joining up the political and the kind of the officer element of the councils. That's really what we're trying to do here. So these items that we're looking at are linked to key items within the corporate plan, within the recovery plan, as Simon mentioned, and also in that manifesto. Okay, all right. Julie, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. It's just to share some thoughts and observations, really. So in Child and Family Services, we're doing lots of pieces of work under the Creating a Social Care Workforce around recruitment and retention, incentives, training support, etc. And also separate to that, but obviously connected, is the Welsh Government's programme for change around different delivery models, particularly where it's about removing profit from children's social care in particular. So I just wondered whether it might be helpful. So I do feel maybe some focus from the committee for child and family and adult may be beneficial, because it is a massive scope potentially. Whether it might be helpful for us to share, both children, family and adult, the work that we've currently got underway aligned to this, as well as the Welsh Government's programme for change and conversations we've had around that, to help in your formulation of perhaps where you might want to prioritise the work of the committee or focus the work of the committee.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Julie. And for members in the past, what we've always done is started from that point of view. So start with a wider lens in terms of what the drivers are for the authority in these areas of work, and then look in terms of the scope of what the committee can realistically achieve. So some of the answer to your previous question, Councillor Jeffrey, will come as we go through, rather than it come today. Yeah, no, it is. It's a good question. Councillor Gibbard, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Julie said basically a lot of what I was going to say, actually, in terms of just to provide some sort of context to this item, that obviously there are huge challenges at the moment in terms of workforce recruitment in both child and family and adults social services. So I think what we were looking at with this sort of work plan item is to get the committee's input really on how we can pull a lot of that work together. So as Julie said, there's a lot of really interesting and innovative things going on in child and family, for example. It'd be good to kind of pull all that together into sort of an overarching strategy or policy, or kind of just a look at what we can do to face some of those challenges and what can we do to maybe structure some things differently. And it'd be great to get the committee's input on that and into something coherent. That was kind of the thinking behind this item anyway.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, queries? Amy, is anything you want to add to that?
Just agree with that approach. Yeah, we're doing a lot at the moment, but I think it would be really useful to get it a wider scope on it and get some thoughts on that, because it's a significant challenge, has been outlined already, facing us and nationally as well. So I think it's just we obviously want to be at the forefront of as much innovation and action as we can take, really, to to try and do something around this area.
Councillor Corner.
Hi, thank you. Just wondering about if there is an issue with recruitment and trying to get people on board, if we approached the colleges and maybe drove the interesting courses, I mean, for people to come through in the area to study that as a vocational course, to certainly look at increasing the numbers in the coming years as opposed to right now.
Yeah, and those are exactly the kind of things that we'll be looking at as we go through, Councillor Con. That's kind of naturally what we will be doing month by month as we go through these items. We'll be looking at that and asking those questions. And what we tend to find is an awful lot going on that we don't know about as members. That officers doing an awful lot of work in partnership with different partners in communities, regionally and locally. And one of the other benefits of these committees, Councillor Jeffrey, in answer to one of your questions, is you find an awful lot about what's going on within the local authority that you perhaps didn't know beforehand. I know, so I haven't been here that long, and I certainly learned an awful lot from these committees that I didn't know before. Okay. Okay, if we move on to the second item on the work plan, which would be a new volunteering strategy. I think we spoke about this a little bit last month as well, didn't we, in terms of where we are with that. So there's not an awful lot to add to that. Briefly, in the last PDC, a lot of work was done with that, and it's been led by Anthony Richards, who's here with us, I can see online today, and with Julia, whose second name I forget, in Mansa, in Swansea, CVC, and it's tied into the regional work. So that's quite a long way down the road. So perhaps what might be useful for new members is when we come to that item, so maybe we have a brief presentation at the start of that of kind of where we've come from and where we are and what the end product maybe looks like. Do you want to come in, Councillor Fogarty?
Thank you. Yeah, I think a general comment on the suggested work plan items is that there is apparently a weighting towards the safeguarding people from harm priority, and only one item on the tackling poverty. But I think with the volunteering strategy, I'd really want to see the strategy drive the potential across the two priority areas and more beyond, because volunteering has such a power in terms of strengthening communities, strengthening individuals, skills, confidence, so much. So I just wanted to make that point, really, that it's easy to pigeonhole, and it sort of appears a bit pigeonholed in this paper, but appreciate that it's not, and just want to make sure that's noted, really.
Yeah, that's great. Really important point, Councillor Fogarty. Councillor Pugh, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, just wondering, Kerry, when you're at that stage and you're looking at this, whether you can invite like Amanda Carr, somebody from the SCVS, as you know, with the compact agreement. This comes up, we were talking about it, but I'm just wondering whether we could invite people, I say you invite people in which could perhaps you know, broaden that conversation and sort of really bring us up to speed. I know a lot of us work closely with Amanda for safe, but for the purpose of this group, they may not know SCVS and all that goes on out in the voluntary sector, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, Alison. I think, you know, that's something that we did in the last PDC, was to have people from, you know, various stakeholders then sitting on or coming in on certain items, like the young carers item and things like that. So yeah, I think that's really, really important that we have that kind of diversity of voice within that. So that's definitely kind of the approach that we'd be taking. And Simon quite rightly mentioned
Excellent.
co-production, didn't he, as well,
Yeah.
in his report. And I think that's kind of a core principle of the way that we're trying to work as well, not just in this committee but across Swansea. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the third item on the agenda then is the new corporate debt policy. Anybody want to speak on that or comment on its suitability for inclusion in the work plan? No, Amy?
Yeah, just this is a piece of work that's been developed already. My colleague Tony might want to come in on this as well. So it's progressed quite far, but I think has been highlighted in the report as well. We need to incorporate the work the housing have done around the housing revenue account, and also the cost of living crisis as well, you know, as referenced already about the approaches around tackling poverty. I think there's an opportunity as well to bring in some improvements or some, at least the committee to be cited on some guidance documents and support that go alongside the debt policy as well, particularly around charging and our approaches to that as well, particularly around our approaches considering the cost of living crisis. So I suppose I was just interested to try or to highlight that and to bring forward some of that work alongside the debt policy as well, if that's right.
No, absolutely. That's completely consistent with the conversations I've had outside here with people like Andrew Lewis around the housing and the work that they've already done there as well. So yeah, I think that's really good. Absolutely. Anybody else would want to comment on that item at all? Councillor Jeffries?
Not again the comment, but just a general thought. I mean, is there any sort of background literature? Because from what I understand, there seems to be a lot of work done already, but is there something I've missed in the months? But any sort of background information that we could look at, sort of, so that we know where we are to date.
Okay, so what that is likely to happen, because Jeffries, is when we come to beginning the different pieces of work, we'll start from the beginning in that sense, in terms of kind of where we are currently, what the key drivers, all the stuff you're talking about, really, to get people up to speed with kind of what needs to be done, and what our role is within that. So yeah, okay. I can't see anybody else indicating. And then finally, then the fourth item, which is the looking at the local or producing a local area coordination best practice policy stroke guidance, looking at best practice in how the LACs are working, that the local area coordinators are working across Swansea, including how they've been recruited, the roles and responsibilities, those kinds of things. Because I think, you know, there's been an investment in local area coordinators in Swansea, quite rightly, in my opinion, and they've been around for a couple of years now. But we do know that on the ground, anecdotally at least, that we're having reports that people are working very differently. But we're also in a really positive light. There's some really good work taking place, and I think it's right that we kind of celebrate that in Swansea and highlight that and use that best practice both here and elsewhere outside of Swansea to kind of drive the work that we're doing there, particularly in the context of the recovery plan and the importance of LACs in our communities. And I'm also struck by Councillor Fogarty was saying around the poverty agenda as well, the important roles that LACs play within that, as well as the safeguarding agenda. They both cross lovely there, don't they, with local area coordinators, roles, responsibilities. So that's one other thing that we're looking at there. And I think that could be a really positive piece of work, I think, as well, as much as anything else, in terms of celebrating what's been done and what we continue to do in Swansea, in our communities. But also looking at the kind of relationship between our LACs as well and local members as well. So yourselves and your colleagues in the different parties in council, around how you're working and what your expectations in terms of what your relationships with your local area coordinators should be, really. So some of those things. Anybody would like to come in on that? Councillor Fogarty.
Thanks. It's just relatively minor, but perhaps not comment on the understanding of what local area coordination is in the public domain. So we've had a lovely presentation on what local area coordination is, and I've made a number of referrals, and everybody I've referred so far has asked me, what is that? I don't know what that is. And there's so much benefit for people and so much potential. So I think this would give us an opportunity as well to talk about how do we socialise this concept that's still quite new actually in the kind of public consciousness.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Amy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, sorry, did you want to bring someone else in? Okay. I think there's so many different aspects to this actually that we could bring forward first. So I was just going to make a suggestion of some of the things we could, if that's all right with the members or for your consideration really. And I think as a first priority, we'd quite like to bring forward the discussion around the member engagement and achieving consistency, because we've expanded the team quickly and across all areas, and obviously there's new members as well. And I think we have been doing things like the member training, but that's not everyone will have done that, and there's different approaches as well. So I think we'd like to bring forward that sort of communication approach. The second one around recruitment, we do have a full team in place, but one of the teams actually just secured a promotion, so we know we're going to have a vacancy, and I think it would be a good opportunity to sort of see through the process, because we do entirely co-produce the recruitment process, and I think there's some interesting sharing to be learned there, and obviously we'd be really keen on feedback as well. I'm going to keep going, sorry if that's all right, because there's loads. The third priority, I think, is we've got 2 evaluations ongoing at the moment. One national evaluation that we're involved in that's being led by Hull University, but there's also targeting or looking deep diving into 4 area coordination approaches across the UK. And I think we're really keen to bring forward some of the information from those national evaluation. And we've also got a local evaluation with Swansea University, particularly looking at the measures and how we look at success and how we communicate about area coordination as well. So I think that hopefully will address some of the public communication, but also for you as members to have some information around the evaluation. So that's the third one. And then the fourth priority, just for the first pieces of work, just is around the early help offer as well, because I think it's around the prevention agenda and how that really links there, because I think hopefully that will address that point earlier around the links between safeguarding and area coordination as well, and all the wider benefits. So I think we'd be really keen in terms of the timescales of taking on board what was said earlier about the frequency of meetings, but I think those 4 areas could be ones that we bring forward sooner rather than later, but not next week, but soonish, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, that's fab. Thanks, Amy. Really appreciate that. Yeah, Councillor Jardine.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies again. I keep getting kicked out, so I've just kept my camera off. Amy has said a lot of what I was going to say, but the main one is they can't, I appreciate they can't work all exactly the same, which is what I've been told, but there doesn't seem to be any sameness, I can't think of the word, about them, that they're very different, they work very differently. And also the publicity, because I know there are lots of people that just don't even know they exist. So I was wondering if we could do a bit more about publicizing that they're out there. And that was it. I won't bother to repeat half of, as I said, Amy covered a lot of it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Yvonne. I think those issues around consistency are key, and your second comments were similar to what Councillor Fogarty was saying really as well, weren't they? Councillor Gwilliam, do you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. It's just really to echo what everyone else has said. We are trying to get a consistent approach across the whole of Swansea, and as Yvonne mentioned, local area coordinators are not going to work all the same, because different communities have different issues, and they'll be sort of intervening in different scenarios. I personally, I'm very much a supporter of local area coordination. So I just think that it would be reassuring for ward members to know that communication is going to be streamlined and everybody's going to have the same opportunities to speak to their local area coordinators. So that's all. I'm not going to keep going on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Conway, do you want to come in?
Sorry. I might have been on the whole time since I pressed it. Sorry. Yeah, just to say my experience, I've met with our local area coordinator and it seems really positive, and I really love the whole idea and the concept. From my understanding, well, two things. I agree with what Councillor Fogarty said, which was about not many people know of it, and with what Hayley also just said. Now, the needs will be different depending on the wards, but just to be clear, what ours told us was that obviously we can only recommend they contact her as opposed to her actually intervening. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, but so far I think it's really good.
Okay, I can't see anybody else indicating. So I think before we have a discussion around timescales and how we sequence the work and which we prioritize first, etc., I think it's probably an opportune moment to move the work plan, if that's okay. So then we're happy to, yeah, okay. I'm in Councillor Fogarty, it's fine, absolutely.
It's just a sequencing thing, because if I make this comment after we've moved it, it will be a moot point, really. It's on the impact assessment. I don't know how many people like me are interested in impact assessments, but it was just to make the point, really, that really welcome Simon's comments at the beginning around co-production, and that the impact assessment will need to be a live document, because surely we actually don't want the impact to be low forever. We do these things because we want to have a high impact, and we will, I'm sure, as the work progresses, start to see differential impacts on different groups. So there will be, particularly around older people on some of the items. There's a thing around poverty and social exclusion that should be a big one for us, and there will be other things as well. So it was just to make that point, really, that can we continually keep this under review, and can we look to be moving the impact from that low column into a high column, but always, of course, in the positive and not in the negative. So yeah, that was just the point I wanted to make, really.
Okay, thanks for that. Are we okay to move the work plan as stated in the report? Is somebody happy to move that? Okay, it would be good to have different names. So, okay, Councillor O'Connor will move, and Councillor Jeff, you happy to second? Perfect, that's great. Yeah, we need a show of hands then, please, on whether we're happy with this. Everybody for? Yeah. I think that's everybody who's actually on the committee. Thanks, Anna. Put your hand down now. Unless you've been held up at gunpoint, because I can't see you. You have a hand. Okay, that's great. So just briefly then, I think it'd be useful to have a conversation amongst ourselves here now around sequencing, timescales, that kind of thing, so that it's realistic. Whether we do them all, or we set them out bi-monthly. It's entirely, previously what we've done is done it month by month, but it has proved difficult, and I think it proves difficult for officers as well, particularly when we're bringing formal reports to the committee where they've got to be translated as well, which previously wasn't the case a number of years. Now it is the case, so that requires extra time as well, and that all puts pressure on officers who are already, as we know, extremely busy. So I think obviously potentially the biggest piece of work to begin with is probably item 1. So I think probably we need to start that sooner rather than later. Although I'm quite happy to be contradicted on that. What do we feel? Are we happy to start with item 1? So that we've got something prepared, sort of a broad brush, something for the next time, because we have actually got 2 months until the next CDC, haven't we? That's right, isn't it, Alison? Because there isn't one in August, so it does give a little bit of time. So I think it would be good to crack on with that work perhaps in September. We all okay with that? Yeah. Get on screen as well. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So the volunteering strategy, as we've already said, that's kind of trucking along anyway. So I mean, I think my own feeling is that's something that maybe we could just keep an eye on it, on every time as that work is going on behind the scenes, and it's not something that we're beginning or initiating at this point. I don't know, is that okay, Amy? Do you think just either yourself or Tony can give us an update, or Julia as time goes on, just to keep an eye on that. So what do others think in terms of perhaps starting with maybe 2 to begin with, the volunteering strategy and 2 others? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Councillor Fogarty?
Thank you. Yeah, I would want us to see prioritising the new corporate debt policy in light of the cost of living crisis and the fact that energy bills are going up again in October. There's a real time sensitivity to that issue.
Okay, all happy with that? I mean, I think I'm perfectly happy with that. So I think for the minutes, Alison, if we look at in the September CDC, we look at the first item in the work plan, creating a workforce. We'll have an update or brief update on the volunteering strategy and where we are with that.
In September as well.
Yeah, just a brief update on that. Though I think that'll just be Tony or Amy can just attend and just give us a quick update on that.
Okay, can I just say we're not allowed to have any verbal updates anymore. It's got to be
Right.
written reports
Okay.
or a presentation.
Okay. Because would it be actually for the new members' sake, it might be useful to have a sort of a presentation giving a sense of where we come from, where we are, and where we go into with that, so that you all feel up to speed with that. Is that okay? Yeah. And then the corporate debt policy as well. Then for September, again, that will just be maybe possibly a presentation on where the authority is with that, the different pieces of work that we currently doing that feed into that, or that this would feed into, and the key drivers for the authority around that as well. I think that would be good. We've obviously got lots of expertise, not just with officers but with members as well, and hopefully with cabinet members attending as well. We could have a really rich discussion about that in the first time. Is that okay? Just to say as well, we do have the option as a committee to hold workshops in between. We don't like to do them too often because they're not public meetings when they're workshops, which of course this meeting is, so it's publicly available. So we don't like to do that very often. But if there is the odd piece of work where we think there's a pressing reason where it would be useful to have an hour and a half specifically looking at something, then we have done that in the past, and we would be really, we are able to do that as a committee if that's what the committee wants, but just not every month. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Can I just check, because we've got those 3 quite meaty items on the September agenda, do you want me to extend that meeting to an hour and a half? Do you think you might need a bit longer than an hour?
Yeah, and would everybody be okay with that? It's the first meeting really to really kick off the work plan as well, isn't it? So I think it would be useful to get things moving. Otherwise, it'll be October, and then and then maybe what we can do is in the October CDC, we can look at the LAC item as a starting point for the LAC item then, and then maybe look at by monthly perhaps for the meatier items to give officers a chance to do things and for things to move on. Otherwise, we'll just get reports which aren't very meaningful. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Okay, that's great. Any
Yes, I am.
questions? Any questions or thoughts or comments on any of this or any of the work of the CDC before we've closed the meeting? Come in, Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, just one point. I think we're looking to achieve some outcomes here. Is there a kind of cut-off date or that might be in mind?
Well, it's going to depend on the item. So and the different types of items, aren't they? So I'm looking at the local area coordination item. That would be something where we would be looking at producing something, some kind of document at the end of it, some kind of guidance at the end of it. So that would be very different, say, to the first item on the agenda. But what we'd be looking to produce, Councillor Jeffries, is policy documents that would feed into full council to be voted on potentially. And that's something that obviously we've done as a committee in the past. So it'll come, we'll do some work here. We'll produce some policies here that then gets sent through the full council protocols and policies, the cabinets, corporate briefing cabinet, potentially council, depending on the item. So that's how it works. So what we're doing is working within the sort of the policy development apparatus of the framework of the council. If that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, if there aren't any more questions or comments, can I just thank everybody for their attendance and thank all the officers for their support. And there isn't committee next month in August. So the date of the next one is
26th of September.
the 26th of September 2022. Okay, thanks very much. Meeting's closed. Thank you very much.